Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Theory of Life podcast. We have a very special guest on today. His name is Ivan. Ivan, please introduce yourself and the topic.
Yeah,
Please. Yeah.
my name is Ivan Karpitsky, good friend of
Yeah.
Wade.
Uh
Met him in college,
huh.
and we're both, I, I don't know if I guess we're artists, but more, I guess a better way of describing is we're people that appreciate art deeply, and we want to talk about it. But the specific topic would be, what did we land on exactly?
So I was thinking about, you said something about the importance of art, and I
Yeah.
was talking about like profound experience, and I wonder how we can kind of merge the two. And I have a series of questions just in
Yeah.
case. But it's a, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing. So I've done two podcasts on this similar kind of topic, and it's
Yeah.
very interesting hearing different perspectives. So I did one with Ben on music, and that was fantastic because we talked about performance and a bunch of other weird things. I talked to my friend Stephen Ramsik. You know Stephen Ramsik. He's from the
Yeah.
philosophy and everything. So we talked about the nature of value and everything. But here's the thing. So Ben is creative, but he's also like there's a lot more to talk about with him than just creativity because we have this whole piano background. With you
Yeah.
specifically, I'm very interested in the creative process because you're a highly creative person.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm a highly creative person. And I brought up this distinction to you the other day, and I think it's a good distinction. I think there's a distinction between an artist and a creative person, and I think you can be both. And you probably are both, but I think it's possible for someone to be an artist and not creative, and vice versa. So yeah, what do you make of that?
Yeah. In the context of the conversation that we were having, I believe that what we were talking about was that we were wondering if to be a creative person, there needs to be how much of originality needs to be a part of it, of being a
Yeah.
creative person.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with originality is, what is original? Because I feel like, and if we've talked about this, is that I feel like we copy other people. Something my youth pastor always says, I'm the culmination of the coolest people I know.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
yeah.
we meet somebody and we kind of adopt that piece of them to our personality. And I think the same thing applies to art. Um, when we see a piece of art, something resonates with us, and we subconsciously record that. Sometimes consciously,
Yeah.
but subconsciously we record that. And
Yeah.
if you really put the effort in, a lot of the art, let's say with painting,
Yeah.
you'll find yourself, if you trace it back, you're like, oh, I do that because I was really influenced by this art,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it is, and that can be influenced by teachers or just the stuff we consume. But as
Yeah.
far as a creative person, I think it is the ability to. I think originality. There's something to that idea. Even the way in which, and I think that the reason why I said that I believe you're a creative person as well is because when you play the piano, you're not simply spewing back notes. I know it's a very
Yeah.
non-technical way of saying it, but you're
Viewing
putting your
notes.
own. Yeah. Well, actually, my first introduction to Wade was actually hearing you play.
Yeah.
Well, actually, more accurately, I should say, seeing you play, because
Yeah.
you get very engrossed in your music and you
Yeah.
really get into it. And I think
Yeah.
that was really cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, like there's a level of not wanting to be too distracting from the art,
Yeah.
from the piece, but that was your own flair, and I think
Yeah.
that's what makes you an artist.
Yeah.
So that kind of, sorry, creative.
Mm-hmm.
Because and because there's some people that can just sit down and then they just play the notes as it is on the sheet music, and then there's
Yeah.
another way of doing it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's kind of what you're thinking.
No,
Are you trying to
that
think about like in my field
Well,
specifically?
so we can talk about your field. I do kind of want to chase this piano thing for a second, though, because
Yeah.
I wonder. I kind of want to get at the bottom of this. I kind of like the Stephen Ramsik approach, where he was like, "Let's get to the bottom of an issue and figure it out." Like, because I'm just confused about something. Because I really don't feel creative. So there's two modes of artistry that I
Yeah.
get in. right? One is learning music, right? Maybe I sit at the piano and there's a Beethoven sonata, and I'm sorry, people here at ASU who might disagree. Like, there might be an objective way to play this piece, and a better way to play this piece than worse ways to play this piece. That's that's one kind of artistry. Another kind of artistry is me sitting down and coming up with a bunch of stories in my head because it was fun, and like letting my mind wander, and then like put together like wild puzzle pieces and like really creative new ideas, and I can envision it on a big screen that has this crazy idea. That feels more creative to me than sitting down at the piano and doing that. Because I feel like at the piano, I'm like working at something. I'm like chipping away at like a, a sculpture that I'm making. But with the other one, I'm just creating something out of nothing in a sense, right? I'm just like, this is like popping into existence from me or something.
Yeah,
I don't know, but
I
yeah.
think I think there's two aspects. Number one, the fact that you write stories and you're able to create stories is another evidence of you being a creative. But number two, here's another question for you. Did you always
Yep.
feel like that? Like you were sitting down chipping away at something?
So pretty much. That doesn't mean it's not fun, right? You can make it fun. But I was actually wondering about the creative thing, though, with the developing stories, because if I get far enough down the rabbit trail, it starts to feel like chipping away at something, right? So I think maybe what I'm describing is less creativity and it's novelty. And creativity is just engaging with art in general. I don't know. It's an
Yeah.
idea. But
Well, I think that we need to get rid of the notion that creativity doesn't take work and art doesn't take work. It takes work.
yeah,
It's a discipline.
that's true.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's
yeah,
it's not just like, ooh, I'm feeling inspiration, blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? If I'm creating a world, let's say I'm writing a book and I'm creating a world, I need to put in the
yeah.
work to start explaining some of the logic. It's like, ooh, I have this
Hmm.
character and he goes on this journey, and that's my inspiration, and I came up with this cool
Yeah,
idea. But it's like, okay, but in this world, you're saying this character can fly. So does that mean everyone else can fly? And next thing you know, you're chipping away, as you say, of the world, and you're trying to
yeah,
dissect it all. I think another reason why you feel like, especially with music, you're having to train at it rigorously is because, I mean, that's what you study. I
yeah,
think that that's become something that you associate is homework. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You associate music with homework
yeah,
now.
yeah,
Because I think that a lot of people that are English majors, storytellers, or whatever you want to, whatever the
yeah,
equivalent is, I
yeah,
feel like they also feel like they are chipping away at it, and it's becoming homework as opposed to actual music. And in a
yeah,
way, that is sad. That's part of the reason why I'm not a film major, is because I don't
yeah,
want it to become homework. But on the other
yeah,
hand, too, when I sit down and I'm gonna make a film, I'm like, ooh, this is a cool film. I wrote the script, but now I have to shot list. Now I have to
yeah,
budget. Now I
yeah.
have to, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? I have to do all these things, and
Yeah.
there are creative ways and, like you said, fun ways of going about that. But I think
Hmm.
we need to understand that the hard work and, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's hard for creatives to do it because we are reliant on inspiration, and it's really
Yeah.
hard to have inspiration in the nitty gritty, getting down to it,
Yeah.
rolling up your.
No, yeah. No, I think that's really insightful. I think artists need to be prepared to put in the hard work because
Yeah,
sometimes there's the illusion of I'm just going to be inspired all the time and it's just going to flow out of me so easily. I agree with this. I was thinking a little bit too while you were speaking. I think the more you engage with one project, the less freedom you have. And I think that's where it feels like creativity goes out the window and it starts to feel like you're chipping at something, right? Because like when you start developing a story, and presumably you with filmmaking, like the moment you establish any kind of character, 500 million possibilities go out the window because it's not what your character would do, right? And the more you do this, it just gets more and more limiting. There's a trade-off of artistry here and reward, but also you kind of lose some creativity. So yeah.
definitely. Uh, it's probably one of
Yeah.
the things I struggle hardest with is
Yeah.
this is kind of a confession right now.
Okay.
I think every film I think basically every script, maybe there's like one or two, but basically every script I've written has been I've shot and turned into a film. Some of them bigger scales than others.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Yeah.
That means that I don't sit and I write out as some people say I should be doing, of writing out
Yeah.
tons of scripts and being like having a ton of scripts, and out of one of the scripts I picked a film that I like the best.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
happening is my process is a little different. Before I sit down to write a script at all, I
Yeah.
come up with a whole world in my head. I've mapped out basically everything.
Mm.
And that
Yeah.
doesn't work for a lot of people. And what I'm doing is very risky
Yeah.
because, you know what I mean? It's like you're kind of limited with your options.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something I would recommend at all. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
lazy. One of the things I hate the most is my fear of finding out that I'm not a good artist, not a good filmmaker.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm scared of that.
Yeah.
And so part of the way but the thing I'm most scared about it is not that people will watch the film and be like, "Ooh, I don't like how you did that. That plot didn't make sense. That was boring, blah, blah."
Yeah.
But that they don't get to experience what I feel in the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it was in my head, it made me feel things. It inspired me. It was a piece of me. And yet I didn't communicate it well enough, or my feelings aren't worth, you know what I mean? They're not
crazy. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's one of the problems with the artists is we're narcissists.
Yeah.
So that's a lot all over the place there, but
no, it's so interesting. Yeah. I mean, man, I forgot what I was gonna say. I do this all the time. I literally had something in my head. I completely forgot what I was gonna say. No, oh yeah. So here's the thing. I watched Late Night with the Devil the other night. It's a horror movie, recently came out. It's fantastic.
Okay.
What was so fantastic about this film, I won't spoil it, but what was fantastic was it engaged with the audience, right? So it broke the barrier between audience and film, right? So there was a hypnosis scene, and it actively engaged the people in the theater, which is so weird. It's a bigger version of Deadpool making jokes to the audience about Marvel Studios and Disney, right? Breaking the fourth wall. There's something about that that's just fantastic. But anyway, it got me thinking, and I don't know, like, I was wondering how I could break the fourth wall in the best way imaginable. And really, this is not even relevant to the point I'm trying to make. I mean, just generally, when I have, like, cool ideas like that, or, like, maybe these cool ideas express something that's going on inside of my emotional life, I definitely feel like I need to find a really succinct way to communicate exactly what I'm feeling in this creative way that I think is cool. And I share a fear where it's like if I don't properly communicate this, like I, I feel like I'm boxed in or something. It's It's a claustrophobic feeling. I just want to be able to say something, but I don't know. I can't do that. But yeah, so I sympathize with what you're saying.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. One of the difficulties too is trying to like sometimes when you there's one problem is when you're working on a project, you're learning how to let go of certain things because we get fixated. I want to communicate this one thing. I want to communicate this one feeling. And then it turns out you create this beautiful story that's actually separate from that, but you're still stuck on that. So you're sacrificing this beautiful story just to get this one little feeling, and you get stuck on that.
Yes, yeah.
Or you get stuck on one character, and you just need to learn to let go of that character. Let that character die. Let that character become something you didn't want them to become in the beginning. And I'm telling this through the lens of film, obviously. I mean, that happens all the time, and I really hate when that happens. I hate when that happens because I'm like, no, I want this to be this way. And if it's not that way, then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of this, I don't know what to attribute it to. Is it laziness? Is it narcissism? Is it lack of talent? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, this inability to chip away at something and work at something and mull over it. I don't know.
That's so I think you just like really successfully articulated like writer's block or some kind of artist block or something.
I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, like there's kind of a question about burnout here, right? I mean, because I definitely so
Yeah,
at this point, like I'm not even so my main thing is piano, and I like philosophy as well. I have this podcast, and like both of those are kind of like somewhat grindy slash analytic slash this is what you're doing. There's not much of this creativity thing involved, but every once in a while I'll do this whole creativity thing, and it's getting me thinking because like when I develop stories in my head or when I develop different things ideas and I have these write down sessions and all of this, it's so bad because I'll get stuck on tiny little spots in the story because I
yeah,
have a big vision and I want to make sure every part is perfectly in this vision without it being contrived. And again, maybe I'm lazy or I don't have talent or maybe all of these things. And then one of two things happens. You either like say, you know what, I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to figure it out no matter what. And then
yeah.
you burn out and hate the project in a week, or you just quit. Um, and what you said about letting the project, have its own course or whatever, like let it go and like let it take you somewhere else. Like that is wow. That is scary. Like this is not what you want to do as an artist. But no, that was very insightful. Yeah.
I something also I think yeah, letting the project, you know, um, being willing to let go of characters, prioritizing the art over yourself, but like being a vessel through that I mean I'm a Christian that God can work through.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
another interesting thing that writer's block, especially in this day and age, is I think we've been told that we're special. It's a
Okay.
humanistic view. You're special,
Yeah.
and the reality is we're not all geniuses. Like you hear all these, we hear all these stories about like books, like classics that have been written overnight. A guy was hit by inspiration, he wrote it overnight, and he was
Yeah.
able to, Dostoevsky is able to like grab these huge philosophical ideas in the Russian age, and he's able to condense them into this book that
Yeah.
basically is transcendent. I mean, like
Mhm.
that applies to every period in time.
Yeah.
Um, what I've been trying to work through is Brothers Karamazov. Um,
Okay.
and so I mean, I don't have what I mean, the capability to get that all. Yeah. But
Yeah.
the thing is, we get frustrated with ourselves. Why it's not coming right away? And the realization is that you are not the genius you're not who you think you are. At least
Yeah.
not who you think you are. Um, so stop trying to be someone you're not. Um, but that's
Yeah.
not to say that you're not an incredible human being and
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, and this is something I've been wondering is like, let's say I'm not as great as my mama says I am.
Yeah.
Do I still have something worthwhile to contribute to art and film and everything like that? Because
Yeah.
honestly, if I'm not the genius, then I don't want to contribute to the slop. I don't want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's that verse that says, judge, like you're going to be judged by the same measure that you judge others. And I find
Yeah.
myself like critiquing, student short films here and everything like that. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
terrible. And then I'm thinking, like, I
Yeah.
wonder if people view this at me. I don't want to contribute to that. But then I'm thinking, what if it's okay? Like,
Yeah.
they're contributing something. I mean, yeah, it's not. What if I make an impact on 5 people? Is it still worth it? If my
Yeah.
film gets lost, if my art gets lost among the other art pieces, is it still worth doing it? And it's something I've been really struggling with lately and
You
wrestling
know,
with.
that's so interesting. Like, I mean, there's kind of a question of what is the utility of art in general? I mean, is it a something for you or is it something for others? And
That's the
presumably,
question.
presumably we want to be selfless people, so we want to say, oh, we can use this to serve people. But really, like I feel like the artist thing is very self indulgent. Like I mean, maybe as an afterthought, we can
Yeah,
serve people. But I think plausibly, as long as it serves our intellectual investigation, it might be worth it. And it's always great if it serves others. Now, you can't sacrifice the service of others because you're self indulging in your own art.
yeah,
But that was something I was thinking about. Yeah.
that's really good. I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think also just trying to get rid of the notion that, in general, I think art is very important. and it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking about, is like what you said about like it's our own intellectual
Yeah.
stimulation. Because the thing is, when we're what did you say exactly? You said intellectual what?
I don't remember what I said.
Like our own benefit, right? Let's say it's our
Yeah.
own intellectual benefit.
Indulgence.
Indulgence.
Yeah.
That's it has a negative connotation, but I know I get what you're trying to get at.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that when it's benefiting us, I think that it does, the utility of it. It does benefit those around us.
Yeah.
I find that I am a really good. This is bad because I need to get my identity from Christ. As a Christian, I believe I need to get my identity from Christ.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, I find myself when I'm living out, when I feel like I'm doing something, when I'm creating something, I'm
Yeah.
so happy, and I feel like I'm much more pleasurable to be around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I need. I can't. I don't want circumstances, and I don't want my art to control me.
No. Yeah.
Because when it controls you, it destroys you.
Yeah.
It really does. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, but talking about the general importance of art, that's something I've been thinking about lately a lot. Is because
Yeah.
I don't know if this is kind of shifting another. I don't know if this is something
That's fine. I'm fine with that. Like, this is so fascinating. This is actually so. Oh my.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. No, this is fascinating for me too because okay, and this is something I want to come back to when we start, getting near the end. But
Yeah.
I want to get back to why you think you're not a creative. That's something very fascinating to me.
Okay.
That I want to hit on that more. I want to know where this came from.
Yeah.
But before we get there, the importance of art.
Yeah.
There's a reason why. I mean, with my film, there's a reason why the classic, why Hitler had such a focus on films. The reason why Nazis cranked out so many propaganda films.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, the film industry is millions and millions of dollars. There's a quote that says, artists are the unspoken legislators of the world. Which basically, we're kind of like, a judge tells you whether or not you did something wrong or right, but art tells you what is wrong or right, kind of. We get kind of, a lot of our idea of morality does come from art.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's good or bad, because artists are people that are very, like, all over the place.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you this, because my dad and I had this debate, and my dad's a very technical guy. He's
I'm a technical guy too. So
yeah. Okay. He's a very technical guy. He grew up. He had dyslexia, which in Russia, he's an immigrant from Russia. He was in Kazakhstan, but in Russian culture, you don't have dyslexia. You're stupid. So my dad didn't really spend too much time with reading, with philosophy. What he did, like in class, instead of reading his like English book or whatever, he'd be reading his robotics book. So my dad is a genius in the sense of like with robotics, electronics, all this stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
And he believes that the plumber is more important to society than the artist, than let's say the musician.
Okay.
And that's something I wanted to ask you about. Is what do you think about that?
This is a great question. I'm so glad I was asked this question.
Yeah.
So no. Okay. So I really kind of have. Here's the thing. Like. Okay. So I've had this conversation with people, and the conversation goes something like this. It's something like, what matters most in this life? Maybe developing a skill matters. Maybe becoming a fantastic athlete matters. Maybe developing the best piece of artwork matters. Maybe figuring out a complete philosophy theory of everything matters. Who knows? Clearly, actually, what seems to matter the most, despite what I desire, and despite my identity, and despite all of my passions, it actually just seems obvious that service is what matters the most. Like, I'm not a servant. I'm a deeply selfish person, and I have like no desire to serve people. Like, for me to serve someone, it would take willpower and discipline. Like, it's not like I wake up and I'm like, man, I just can't wait to serve someone today. Some people it is like that. With me, I'm like, ugh, I just want to do my own thing and focus on me. It's all I want to do. But in the back of my head, it's just, or in the front of my head, wherever it is, I can't see how this could be false. Like, clearly, service and being others oriented is the highest good. And it's interesting because it gets a little paradoxical because you can't be service oriented to be a better version of yourself because that's self oriented, right? To be the best version of yourself, you have to be completely focused on service and not focused on being the best version of yourself. So you can only be the best version of yourself when you're not focused on being the best version of yourself, which is very weird and paradoxical and self-defeating. Anyway,
Yeah.
I had this conversation with artists and musicians and other people, and they tell me, "Well, Wade, I mean, clearly, you can be a musician and you can serve people with that, right?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but if service is the highest good, surely the most amount of service is a better good than less amount of service. So, unless I'm rationalizing my musicianship into the service equation, the question I should be asking myself is how much service can I do at one time, and what is the best way to get there? Clearly, playing the piano for people is not the best way to do that. The best way to serve someone is to go out there, maybe pick up trash, maybe help people who are dying, join some kind of maybe the police force, firefighting, the military, something that just saves lives, or maybe raise a bunch of money and give it to people. And like maybe if art is the best way for you to do that, that's completely accidental, but sure, do it. And then it's instrumentally valuable for a higher good. Um, all of that said, I don't know if the plumber is more important than the artist because he fixes toilets, right? But the firefighter or the person who's in the military or the person who's just always serving people, that might be more important than the artist.
Well, my dad's reasoning was that we say we take them for granted because the thing is, it's like, yeah, I think that that let's say, keeping with my comparison of the artist, let's say right now, Taylor Swift to me right now is more important until your toilet clogs,
Yeah.
until your toilet clogs, right? And all of a sudden, the plumber's very important, right?
Yeah.
So I guess it's a based on assessment. That's a really good question. That's a very good point. Is the whole service aspect to it?
Yeah.
Now, the fact that my dad, this whole theory from him came from his frustration of the millions of people that worship Taylor Swift.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the reason why I said that art was, maybe importance not the right word, but the reason why I said important was because he's like, people should be worshiping the plumber, and he's not saying like the plumber is in like, he's saying generically plumbers,
Yeah.
firefighters, electricians. He's kind of lumping all that into them.
Yeah.
But he's saying, and the reason why I said is because that she is a musician, she's an artist, she is tailoring, pun intended, to something that is
Yeah.
uh, within our soul. It's something that we need. Maybe it's the desire to worship, but I think it is this sort of art, this desire for feeling, to be a part of something, and
Yeah.
I think art encapsulates all of that, honestly. And that was
So
my reasoning of saying this is why art's more important, is because everybody is worshiping that.
no, so that's interesting. I think there's like another conversation to have in this other conversation, like about what kind of person would you want to be? Would you rather be a plumber or would you rather be Taylor Swift? Now that's a really good question because like it also kind of matters what kind of artist you are. So this might bring up the point you brought up earlier about how art is sometimes hard work and it sometimes sucks and you just have to do it because like you just got to push through and grind sometimes. That's just reality, right? So I've had this conversation with people, and I don't want to diverge too much, but the conversation is something like, who would you rather be? Would you rather be someone that has all their dreams and goals right now, or would you rather be the person that doesn't have them and can't have them unless they work really hard to get there? Which person would you rather be? And if you think about it carefully, I would say most people would presumably say the second one because there's a lot of virtue in pursuing something you really want, and it's like the only way to get there, and it's really difficult. There's a lot of virtue in that. So to tie it back, right? Someone. So I love Taylor Swift's music, but to be fair, I assure you, she might spend 10 minutes making a chord progression, and I don't know how much. I shouldn't say. She might put like her heart and soul into it. I shouldn't say anything. But I get the point is it depends on the person. So if the person is doing something like you're doing, like they're putting in a lot of work and they're really making it happen, I think that's more admirable than the person who doesn't put in as much work. So if the plumber puts in more work and the artist puts in less work, then perhaps there was more virtue in being the plumber. So maybe I want to be the plumber. But we're only talking about one thing, that of pushing through difficulty. There's also the question of what you're actually producing in life, and how much that matters. It's like a trade off situation. And that was just one thought that I had.
Okay, all right. So 2 questions then. What are we gonna, just for the sake of the conversation, what are we gonna categorize the plumbers, the firefighters, all of these people? What's like a category that we can give that? Like art, and then there's.
I don't want to say non-art. I mean,
it's hard.
Practical, pragmatic. I don't know.
Yeah, but anyways, whatever that thing is, what is it? Do you think then? My second question. Yeah. What is it that you think then that brings in the millions to Taylor Swift, to Michael Jackson, to Van Gogh's art?
Yeah.
What is it that's bringing in all these millions? Fine, let's focus for now. Well, I'm just curious for Taylor Swift and Michael Jackson, for these people. Let's focus on Taylor Swift. What do you think it is? Because here's the thing: we're like, okay, why are we talking about art? And art's such a broad thing, and why are we focusing on Taylor Swift?
Yeah,
she's huge. Like, if she canceled a show in one of the cities, it would tank the economy in that city for like a few days, apparently. Because like everyone books hotels and everything like that, and so if all of a sudden everyone cancels everything, she's a huge impact on the culture. She's going to be in history books. So why is it that you think that people are drawn to her? What draws?
That's a good question. I mean, presumably her music is like fun to listen to, and like her concerts are electric, right? So that's what draws people to her. I was thinking, it's really interesting because I think it's helpful to literally take the plumber and the musician or the artist, whatever. Like literally the plumber, not firefighters, not anyone else. Literally the plumber, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, right? Let's say your pipe bursts, right, and you're flooding, right? The plumber is very important to you, right? But imagine you're having the worst month of your life. Maybe your girlfriend broke up with you. Maybe your like dad died or something, and all you want to hear right now is fantastic music, and maybe you love Taylor Swift. So you go to the concert. That does more for you than, well, it's difficult because you don't want to have a flooded house. They're actually both very important. And so I guess it just depends on the situation,
So what world would you rather live in? In a world where poop was everywhere and there was no toilet, or there was no music? And my dad's like, I can live without music. And I'm like, no, you can't. Because first off, it's easy to experience something. It's easy to say something that you haven't experienced. Same thing with me. I would definitely not want to live in a world without plumbers that don't know. You know what I mean? I don't want my, feces right outside my front door. I don't want that. Sorry, that's very crass. No, but like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What world would you rather live in?
So, I mean, to be fair, maybe your dad could live without music. He couldn't live without art, or something like self-expression or creativity or something.
He couldn't.
And I don't want to get too bogged down on what it means to be art, but you asked what world would rather live in. I mean, I suppose. I mean, technically, my mind could allocate to a flooded house or a flooded city or something. Like, my mind could get used to it. Like, there's been a lot of things that I've done, and my mind has said, get over it. I tell you what, my mind would shatter if there was no outlet for any amount of self-expression, right?
That's really good. I like that.
I assure you, like, some of the most impoverished locations get release because of certain maybe creative outlets and stuff. So
that's beautiful. I think that's so true. I think that gives me inspiration for some sort of film. Actually, that's crazy.
Yes,
because I like this idea of this world where, I mean, that's what people did through the ages. We didn't always have plumbing, but you know what we did have? Self-expression. We did have art. And it's
Yeah.
like, I was gonna say like, okay, here's the thing. Yeah, if we didn't have plumbing, probably disease would be on the rise. People would be dying
Yeah.
faster. Our lives would be short, but it would be sweet. But then I was thinking, if we did have plumbing but no art, I think that we would die still pretty
Yeah.
quickly. I mean, or at least our existence would be miserable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyways, but yeah, what you made that point is like that human spirit. You know, I don't want to get
Yeah.
humanistic because again, I'm a Christian, but
Yeah.
that human
Yeah.
spirit that's like, even though everything's flooding and we're living on rafts,
Yeah.
you know that there's going to be artists who draw paintings of that and make it beautiful
Yeah.
and make it novel.
Yeah. I
There's going to
mean,
be musical pieces. If we lived in a world where it was miserable like that, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So, yeah.
50 years from now, there's going to be people looking back on us being like, how did they live like that? Like,
Yeah.
like, we don't know. Who knows? There's some chemicals in our walls, like in the walls that we use, that are just toxic.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? We don't even realize it. And it's like, how are we living that? And we're like, you know how we left it? Even though that was slowly
Yeah.
killing us, we had relationships, we had family, we had art. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's really cool. I love that idea. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
No. I mean, I was thinking of something like, I imagine the world of floods. People are like, well, at least we have art. But I imagine the nihilistic world of no art. No one's saying, well, at least we have plumbers, right? You know what I mean? Like, no one's like, man, I'm miserable, but at least we have the pipes fixed, right? So, yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah,
really insightful. I wonder if so. This might diverge off the topic, but we
that's
can
fine.
brain it in quickly. I mean, I wonder if it's art specifically, and it might be something more fundamental than art. It might be something like passion slash hobby slash interest, generally, right? I think as long as people have things that they're passionate about, I think that's what matters. And a lot of things people are passionate about are artistic. I wonder if you can interdefine passion and art. Um, what are your thoughts on that?
I was just thinking about this. Well, I guess because my mind is still on the plumber. Uh, because like, the plumber can be creative in the way he fixes his plumbing. So is that art? Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. I don't know. That's just a side thing. But anyways, passion. You said the difference. You saying, are you asking the difference between passion and creativity?
No, I'm not necessarily asking a question. I'm just wondering if art is what's essential, and I wonder if it's something just like passion slash meaning slash doing something you enjoy, whatever that may be. Because presumably people can enjoy stuff that is not artistic. I can actually imagine a world where maybe there's no art in this guy's world, but he really loves plumbing, right? So he starts becoming a plumber, and he experiences the same thing that I do as when I engage with music. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, because
yeah,
I don't know. I guess my first thought was like, yeah, but everybody's different. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Everybody, like, you know, like my thing's not plumbing, but maybe if I lived in that world, maybe my thing would be plumbing.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's like what like that was one of my dad's also theories, is that back in the whatever age Beethoven was, like what years was
like
he in?
the 17, 1800s. Yeah,
The 1800s, whatever.
yeah,
Back then it was cool to be a composer, right?
yeah,
But my dad's reasoning is, if he was a composer now, I mean, if he lived now, he'd be a rapper, or I don't, you know what I mean, like whatever else.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
mhm,
mean? And that's an
yeah,
interesting thought to think about. It's like,
yeah,
what does our environment influence our passions, and
absolutely,
what
yeah.
about our passions? You know, but I think that we can be passionate. I think we can learn to be passionate about anything
Okay, that's interesting. That's very
if we
interesting.
sur- if we accept the circumstances we're in. If I was living in a world where I didn't, you know, like let's say I ended up in a prison camp somewhere, I would
Yeah,
have to learn to be passionate about something, or else my soul, as you and I've established, would
yeah,
crumble and shatter, and my
yeah.
brain would shatter. I mean, I'd be done. If I didn't have something to
Yeah.
be passionate about, I'd be done. And in my worldview, I believe that ultimately it's God. But I think that God gives us other things and finding to be passionate about other stuff too. Um, so yeah, I think that's one of the points to make about that.
So that's
That was
so
kind of a word vomit, but
Yeah, no. That's so interesting. The fact that you can make anything enjoyable slash you can make yourself passionate about anything. That's really weird because like think about think about particular. I'm just thinking of workouts right now in my head. Think of particular workouts people do, right? Who sat down one day and said, "I really just want to be able to get on the ground with my forearms and do this thing that I'm going to call a plank for 10 minutes." Like, who thought that? Like, I mean, people thought that maybe picking up big things would make your muscles bigger. But no one thought specifically that a plank was just going to be awesome. But now there's plank competitions, and people are planking for like hours on end. And it's like, well, it's just a plank, man. Like, who cares? People can find anything to be passionate about. And that is, when you see the absurdity of a plank, you can see the reality that people
yeah,
will find anything they possibly can. So, that's so interesting.
and that's innate. It's innately human. It's what makes us so weird, and that's what
Yeah.
separates our carnal. Because the thing is, for a carnal, like we think about the next thing, like we think about something that satisfies the flesh. It
Yeah.
satisfies, you know what I mean, like food, sex,
Yeah.
food,
Yeah.
sleep, sex. You know what
Yeah.
I mean, like, all these things, and like this
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
ongoing cycle. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we find ways to be passionate about stuff. We find ways to entertain ourselves. Uh, it's really weird. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't
So,
know, man.
I have a question for you. So, like, what might explain the relevant difference between being passionate about doing a plank and being passionate about creating a story?
Um, well, one of the differences is that um, not everybody can do a plank and not everybody can do a story, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess because like somebody starts writing a story and they're like, I can't really do this, but I can do a plank. And
Yeah.
then someone's like, I hate doing planks and I can't really do it, so I'm gonna write a
Yeah.
story. So I guess that like what you're left with, of what you're actually able to do.
Okay.
Um,
Well, so
what?
I'm thinking, right? So I can actually look at two people from a bird's eye perspective. I can look at the planker and look at the artist, the story writer,
I see.
and be like, they're both doing two fantastic things, but they're different kinds of things. Which one would I rather have in my life, and why? So that's kind of what I'm asking.
Sorry, but you said an artist and a planker.
Yeah, an artist and a planker.
So a planker is interesting because again, is we're getting into the question of utility. Is
Yeah,
how much if a bird's eye view, which one do I care about more? Probably the artist,
yeah,
probably depending on what kind of art they're doing. But the thing with the planker too, I mean, for me, the use of a planker to me is smaller. I mean, I guess the use would be like inspiration, like oh,
yeah.
I want to do
Getting
that.
at.
Look at the abs he has. Look at the
Yeah,
resilience he has. That's
yeah,
impressive. I want to do that. Um,
yeah,
it depends. Um, this sort of gets into the question. I mean, and this is something I told you that I wanted to talk about was
yeah.
something I'm more motivated by personally is not avoiding pain. It's chasing
Okay.
pleasure. So for me, planking, the benefits of planking are a lot more long term for me personally. When I see a planker, um, the the pain I, there's not I don't get enough pleasure for it to be worth it for me. The six pack and the six pack
Yeah,
and the recognition from other people is not worth it. But the process of art, the recognition
yeah,
of art, the seeing the completed work of my art is way more worth it to me than that. But that's just me. That's my approach to it. Um, I don't know if that quite answers.
yeah.
I kind of lost track of
So
thought.
you were something. So yeah, you were saying something specifically about how you're more motivated by the pursuit of pleasure than the avoidance of
Yeah.
pain.
Well, I mean, do you want to hit on that?
Yeah, yeah. I'm very interested in that.
So
Yeah,
for me, I've realized this recently is that I'm much more motivated by the pursuit of pleasure than I am the avoidance of pain. Meaning, for some people, the reason why they want to get a degree let's say, is because they're scared of not being able to find a job, being broke, being all these things. The reason why I want to
Yeah.
get a degree is because I want to enjoy studying. I want to
Yeah.
see the piece of paper hanging on my wall and think that I've accomplished something.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do. And I'm willing to go through a lot of pain for that. And it can be self-destructive because I'm willing
Yeah.
to endure quite a bit of pain for something that's really pleasurable, even if it's for a small amount of time.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's bad. And I'm not like everybody in that sense. Everybody's.
I don't know if that's bad. I don't know. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
That could be a whole other separate conversation to have, but we can touch on this because I am interested. I wonder. Here was one thought that I had. I wonder if you're chasing the experience, and I wonder if you. I don't think you're chasing the experience. So I actually, it's a podcast I did last night. My friend Jennifer, we talked about this, and we talked about the difference between a mode of being and an experience. So plausibly, you're chasing modes of being, right? So I don't think you're chasing an experience in 2 years when you have that piece of paper and you just say, "Wow, I really like that I have this piece of paper." I think you're chasing the mode of being of having got that piece of paper by working
Yes.
hard,
Yeah.
right? That seems like what you're
Yes.
trying to do. And so I think to get a little more clear on what you're saying, I think maybe what you're saying, which is something really healthy, which is I wish I could tap into more, is something like you're motivated by excitement rather than fear, possibly. So I can imagine two kinds of people. One person who wants to complete college because they really want to have been the kind of person to study and to become maybe an academic or something. The other kind of person might go to college because they would think they're an awful person if they weren't smart, right?
Yeah.
And here's the thing: I'm the second kind of person, right? I can't be the first kind of person. It's very interesting to see another kind of person, right? Because like there's this thing in my head that I'm like, I just cannot be motivated by positivity. I actually tried it for like 2 months, and just me, my whole worldview collapsed. My whole life collapsed. I tried the whole maybe self love thing slash motivate yourself by excitement slash all of this stuff. For me specifically, this is not indicative of anyone else's lifestyle. Just me, just mine. My life completely fell apart. So I can only be motivated by the fear of slipping back to who I was. That is the only thing that motivates me. The reason I wake up in the morning is not because I'm excited and run. The reason I wake up in the morning and run is not because I'm excited to run. It's because if I don't run, I'm going to be a worse version of myself. I'm pretty sure you have that too,
Well,
but like, I mean, if you're prime,
I definitely have that. You know why? Because the thing is, the pleasure that I'm enjoying so much of the person that I am now compared to who I was then is worth me
Yeah.
doing it now. It's still pleasure though. I'm enjoying what I have
Yeah.
now. So I guess it's weird. I guess a better way of putting this is, let's get a little bit more existential. I am more motivated by reaching heaven than I am avoiding hell.
That's a really good way of saying it. Really good way of saying it.
And maybe it's because
Yeah.
I have tasted heaven because I'm a Christian and because I've gotten to participate. My life hasn't been easy, but I've had a good life. I've had a lot of good experiences, and I've experienced,
That's interesting.
and you can't really. It's hard to here on Earth. It's hard to experience heaven without experiencing hell. It's hard to.
Yeah.
It's hard, and I don't want to get in the yin yang because I don't think that philosophy is wrong. But here on Earth, one of the ways God shows His beauty is when it's contrasted with ugly. Good is much more visible when it's contrasted with evil.
Yeah.
And I want that good more than you know what I mean? A lot of people don't want heaven because they don't know what it's like.
That's crazy. I think the opposite is exactly true as well. I think they both can be true.
Oh yeah.
I think
there's like this.
I think the reason I'm motivated by my motivation is because I've tasted hell, right? And I'm just like, the last thing I want to do is go right back there. I'm going as far away from there as absolutely humanly possible. So that's interesting.
So and the thing is too, it's like and I think that C.S. Lewis captured it well in his book, The Last Battle, when he's talking about, they reach basically the new Narnia, which is heaven, and there's
Yeah.
these group of dwarves who are basically they're in the new heaven, but they think that they're still in the old Narnia, the old heaven,
Yeah.
and they think they're in the stable still, and they're trapped there.
Yeah.
And Lucy walks up to her, grabs some of the flowers, and puts it up to their noses, but to them it smells like crap. So
Yeah.
this was C.S. Lewis's theory, was that even if an unbeliever, let's say miraculously they did get to heaven, they would be
Yeah.
disgusted because they don't
Mm.
you know what I mean? They would be like, "Whoa, this is not
This is
not
so,
me. This is not who I am."
so great.
And this
Mm-hmm.
does pertain to my art because this does affect my art. And you mentioned the whole thing about being hopeful, and like optimistic, like because you try to be
Yeah.
optimistic. It's not so much about optimism. It partially it is, and if it's done right, it causes you to be more optimistic. But the thing is,
Okay.
when I think that I'm experiencing more pain than I am pleasure, I
Yeah.
plummet into depression. It's pessimistic.
Yeah.
I think that my view is much more susceptible to pessimism. When I feel like I'm
Yeah.
not, you know what I mean? When I feel like I'm not feeling that
Okay.
high, because like drug addicts, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That like,
Yeah. No, I mean, addictions to anything, right? I mean, like when you first said your thing, the first thing I thought of was people on social media, right? Because they're more driven by. It's kind of weird because like our perception of social media has kind of changed. Because I think you're right if this applies to social media. I think people are more addicted to social media because of the pleasure they get rather than the fear of being judged, which is kind of like historically why people think that social media is bad. No, it's not bad because people are scared of being judged. It's bad because people are addicted to it and they want people to like them more. That's different than being scared of people not liking them. Very big difference, and it can sometimes be debilitating. So no, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So we did kind of get off. I wonder how we can tie this into a conversation about art.
I think it pertains perfectly. But like, if you have a way to tie it in, great. But I have a couple ways I can too.
Please do. I don't know.
I don't know how it would pertain to music. I'd like to hear how you contributed to music in your writing.
Okay.
But with my writing and with my work, it definitely affects the stories and the themes that I have in my stories. So that's one way of doing it, is the chasing of pleasure.
Yeah.
I oftentimes, a lot of the themes I have is about chasing something that you want. I guess that's why I'm drawn to romance.
Yeah.
Whereas like other people might be drawn to a revenge story or an action thriller or something like that, where there's a little bit more of like, maybe like a survival thing or something like that. You know what I mean? Avoiding, like, I think like a good example of trying to avoid pain is Castaway, because the guy.
Okay.
That's another way. Is I think that people that are trying to avoid pain are focused on surviving. They see their existence as survival, as so much as chasing the next high. I don't know if that's the right way of contrasting it. But
I know what you're
like
saying.
Castaway, like the character there, he's focused on survival. He's not focused on getting a freaking a sauna, like because he's stuck on an island.
Yeah.
He's stuck on an island, and so he's trying to avoid pain. He's trying to avoid starvation. He's trying to avoid all these things. So I probably would not write that kind of story because I'm not. I don't know. Maybe I would, but I'm not really that kind of. That's not how my mind thinks. I would much more write a story about somebody who is chasing after the pleasure of something, and when he doesn't get it, he is completely devastated by it. Or if he does get it, ecstasy is through the roof. You know what I mean? It definitely affects the themes. That was a very poor explanation, and I'm still working out this idea in my head.
No. Completely fair.
But yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean. Yeah. So I mean, I don't have like a whole lot to add. I wanted to bring up something that have found fascinating. It's like my favorite thing in media, and like I want to know what you think about this. And like, so have you seen Harry Potter?
I've seen the first one.
That's all you need to see. So you remember the mirror
Yes.
of Erised,
Yeah.
right? Listen to the mirror. Okay, so I explain this to all my friends, so people who hear me say this, it's like I'm a broken record to them. But like, anyway, I love this so much. So J.K. Rowling is a genius. Okay, here's what she writes. Okay, Harry looks into the mirror and he sees his parents, right? And he wants to have them there with him. Like his mother puts her hand on his shoulder, he reaches back to touch it, he almost feels it, but then he turns around and they're gone, right? So Albus Dumbledore walks in and he's like, Harry, what are you doing? You can't be staring at this mirror your entire life. You're going to waste your life hoping for something that will never come. And he basically asks him, well, how does the mirror work? And then Dumbledore says this. It's basically, well, it tells him at the end of the film or end of the book, the only way to get the thing you see yourself with in the mirror is to not, you can't want to use it. In other words, the only way for him to have gotten his parents back was if he was never going to be in a relationship with them, right? So this is like to be more specific with the Sorcerer's Stone, at the end, Harry got the Sorcerer's Stone by looking into the mirror and it appeared in his pocket. It only appeared in his pocket because he was never going to use it, right? And this is why Voldemort couldn't get it, because he was going to use it for the elixir of life. And I think this is so powerful. This illustrates a sad, maybe dark insight about reality, which is the more you want something, the less likely you are to get it. And I find that really kind of tragic. This actually shows up in social anxiety, which is really weird. The more you want to be liked, the less people will like you. This kind of self defeating thing happens everywhere. And I see this in media, in film, in books, more than I don't remember specific examples, but I see it everywhere. I just want to know what you think about that.
I I don't know. I think that as a Christian, my desires are slowly through progressive sanctification are becoming more what God wants. And God,
Yeah.
it says in the Bible, if your father gives you good gifts, how much more will I give you? You know? And so
Yeah.
I think that when the things, asking you shall receive, the things that I desire, if they line up with what God wants from my will, the will that He has for my life, I will get that. Now,
Yeah.
I think there is something to say about that, and I don't know, I can't understand God's plan, and I don't think
Yeah.
that there is an explanation for why that happens in a
Yeah.
world without God, because you're right, and I mean, I guess like you're saying, like, let's say
Yeah.
you're wanting something, you want this relationship, and the more you want it, the less chance you have of getting that. I don't know. I mean, because I can think of examples when I wanted something desperately and I've gotten it, and other times I did. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe clarify it a little
So
more.
maybe, yeah, maybe it might help to bring up examples. I was thinking about one because we're talking about creativity and art. I mean, here's one. If you want to figure out a problem with a story, the more you try to hammer it into your head, the less likely you are to figure it out. Right? So this is true with philosophy too. Like if there's a problem with a story, then I need to figure out how to make something consistent with the character or something, and I just hammer it, hammer it, hammer it. As the only way to solve that problem is to stop and take a break.
Yeah,
Right? And that looks something like not wanting it in that particular
but you
instance.
have to return to it, right?
Eventually, but you want it less in that situation, and I think it's helpful in this particular circumstance to conceive of want as not a state of being but an experience. So I think she's talking about experiences, right? So I think having an experience of really desperately wanting something is going to yield bad results. This is different than being in a state of being of you want something,
Yeah.
right? So I have a vision for my life, but I'm not like I don't want it with intense, vigorous emotion right now in this particular instance.
So that's that's a really good point. I think it comes to
Yeah.
the mindset of which we come to something. do I want something just because I want that, or do I want it, and this is what it really is, or do I want it because there's a hole in my soul and I need fulfillment, and all these
Yeah.
little pieces in my life are giving me fulfillment, and this thing isn't giving me fulfillment, and we have an idea for how this piece fits into our lives, and if this piece doesn't fit into our
Yeah.
lives, and in reality, it's a reshaping of our worldview or our the way
Yeah.
you approach something. It's like, I want to get this film done because I want recognition and I want success and I want to be finally fulfilled. But
Yeah.
if you stop and you shift your worldview and you say, wait, actually no, I want to get this film done because I want to see this. I want a couple people to be impacted by this. And all of a sudden
Yeah.
that thing has become more attainable.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind
Yeah.
of a way of like looking at what you're trying to say, is because you learn to let it go
Yeah.
and you shift your worldview. Um,
Yeah.
does that
Yeah.
kind of answer that?
No, yeah, I mean it's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but no, those were definitely good thoughts in addition to it.
I mean, you're saying that like the more you want something, the less likely
Yeah.
you are to get it, right? Is that what you're saying? Is that the right way of
Yeah.
summarizing it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
okay, let's say I mean I'm very happy in a relationship, but let's say you wanted a girl, right? Let's say, I don't know if that's hitting too close
Yeah.
to home, but you want a
No.
girl with all your heart, and
Crazy.
so you're saying the more you want her, the less likely you are to get her.
Yep. Yeah. So here's, and I think it's important to understand want here as something that is an experience, as I said earlier. Right? So I think it's actually most helpful to think of in the context of social anxiety, or maybe anxiety in general. So I don't
Okay.
know how much you struggle with that, but let's say there's someone you really admire and you really want them to like you, right? The more you want them to like you,
Okay.
the more mistakes you make, and the more nervous you're going to be, and the less likely they are to like you because you're just going to be weird, right? Multiply this times 10, and this is what happens in a relationship.
Yeah.
And like so
Okay.
that's maybe just what I'm
Okay.
thinking.
Social anxiety.
But yeah,
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, by social anxiety, it's like the more you're like, don't be weird, don't be weird, the weirder you're gonna be. Is that what you're
yeah,
saying? Kind of like that.
pretty,
So, and
yeah,
you're saying the
yeah.
solution is stop trying to not be weird.
So the solution is to pursue a state of being and not an experience. That's absolutely the solution. It actually solves the problem of love, right? Because it's complicated, right? Because like there's I was talking about this last night with Jennifer. Like I mean, there's this idea in media that love is an experience. Love is this profound thing that, man, you're just gonna be infatuated, and like not it's not mere infatuation. It's like this is like a really deep experience, and we want this, and sure, but like ultimately at the end of the day, love is something very different. It's something like commitment. It's something that might suck every once in a while, and it's something you just got to do.
Right.
It's a state of
It's a
being,
shift of
you
perspective.
know. Absolutely.
So,
And so
yeah.
the J.K. Rowling problem doesn't apply to the state of being, but it applies to the desire for
Okay.
experience. And I think this it's a better point, a more general point of we need to be pursuing states of being rather than experiences.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
yeah,
that I think that the solution to the problem is not wanting it less, it's changing your perspective on it. If you change your perspective on it
yeah,
and of what this thing means to you, then you're gonna get it. Because it's like
yeah.
when I say don't be stressed, don't be stressed, I'm gonna be more stressed. Say that again.
No, yeah.
What did you say your solution was? You said it was a really fancy phrase.
The solution is to experientially want it less. Like in any particular moment, you have less of a desire, but you maintain this state of being desire. So you do, in a sense, lower the desire, but only experientially. You know, you don't lower the deep-seated desire that you have as a state of being.
And I guess I would disagree. I think that it's not about lowering it, it's about changing your perspective on it. It's the understanding of,
Yeah.
I think that something like, oh, I want something, and I guess this is my Christian worldview. It's saying, oh, it turns out you actually, the reason why you're not getting it is because God didn't want you to have that. Or how
Yeah.
about this? Or it's that it isn't like, it's like, ooh, I want, like, I want this girl to love me. I want this girl to love me. Do you want that girl to love you, or do you want the idea of that girl to love you?
Yeah.
So I guess I don't
Yeah.
know if this is making sense. My disagreement is not of just lowering your deep-seated desire. My thing is just changing
Yeah.
your perspective, and that's by stop.
No, yeah.
I don't know.
No, yeah, so it wouldn't be lowering the deep-seated desire. It'd be lowering the less deep-seated desire, right? The one that's more on the surface,
Sorry.
the
Yes,
experiential one.
that's what I meant. That's
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so I do wonder if we're getting off track of the topic, but this is very interesting. But no, I mean, okay, so this is gonna be a complete like 180, unless you have further
No,
thoughts on that. But I think we should go to
it's
the
fine.
topic. Yeah, no, okay, so this is literally a 180, but it's actually a question here that I was just very interested in. Um, you you talked earlier a little bit about what it's like to be an artist, maybe the experience of it. It got me thinking a little bit of what it's like to discover something, right? Do you feel like when you're doing art, you're discovering stuff about reality, or you're discovering stuff about maybe your own creation? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Very much so. I think that the film that we just shot and that we're in color grade and we're in sound design, um,
Yeah.
a lot of it. I think I mean you can't help but write stories and stuff from your own perspective, but this one more than ever was really like it was kind of a retelling of some of the experience that I've had. It was based on some of the experiences I've had, but I didn't realize how much really because watching the film back, I'm like looking at the frame and I'm realizing, oh, I just based the main character all around me, and
Yeah.
it was interesting to see myself on the screen, and that's how I was learning. I actually got to learn about myself through the
Okay.
film. I was learning about how I viewed myself. I'm like watching the film back. I'm like,
That's
whoa, that's how I view myself. Like this is the picture of my that I have in my mind. Uh,
yeah.
and I'm a little scared now for people to go see the film. It's like now they won't watch a movie story. They're gonna be like, ooh, this is how the director views himself.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's interesting. What were some ways you viewed yourself that were unexpected? Unless it gets too personal, in which you don't have to answer.
no.
That's so
I
fascinating.
would. I definitely view myself. I found out that I viewed myself as. I view myself as eccentric, as misunderstood.
Mhm.
I definitely view myself as a
Okay.
misunderstood person. I
Okay.
kind of
Okay.
I knew that, but I didn't realize how much I did until I was done with the script, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Because the
Yeah.
film follows a writer who is going through writer's block, and I think I
Okay.
told you this. Basically, he's going through writer's block. He just had this argument with his friend who has told him he's prideful. Um, this is gonna sound like a brag, but one of the other things that I realized is that I think I view myself as I think I have a decently mature view of myself sometimes because like in the
Okay.
film I have his best friend tell him he's prideful, which I know that I'm prideful.
Yeah.
And he said that
Yeah.
maybe maybe you're not the genius you think you are, which sounds like a slam.
Yeah.
In our day and age, that sounds like a slam, and this goes back to our conversation. But it's
Yeah.
really not. It's if you understand what he's really saying there, he's not saying that you can't write a good story. It's that maybe you need to work a little harder than Ernest Hemingway or
Yeah.
whatever. But anyways, the
Yeah.
film, just to give context, the film is following this writer who just got in an argument with his friend. He's walking down the street. He hears the music playing. So he hears something that he's chasing because he's trying to write this one story. He's going through writer's block. He can't.
Mhm.
He's trying to find his right thread, and he hears this music. And classic writers, because he's in this mindset of I need inspiration. I need the new thing to write about.
Yeah.
He basically hears this music, and the music's beautiful, but he's viewing it through his lens. He sees it as he wants to see it. And just as a side note, and this is a line in the film. Well, I think it's a line in the film. I don't remember, but it's a line that I've been thinking a lot. Is I don't want to love
Yeah.
people. I want to love people for who they are and not for who I want them to be. And so he hears this music playing, and he goes into this music shop, and there's this beautiful girl playing the piano. And of course, he has created this whole idea for how things are going to go with this girl, right? He pretends to not know how to play the piano, and he gets piano lessons with her. And I think you know this. If like when you're in love with somebody, like those late night conversations, like on the texting and calling, like 4 a.m. Basically, this is what these two characters have. And she's of course drawn to him, and she's attracted to him, because he's eccentric and whatever. And I think that that's another thing I've realized about myself is I think that that's what people are drawn to me, is because I think people are drawn to me because I'm eccentric.
Yeah.
Which is
that's it. That's the thing. That's a really meta. That's a question. That's so interesting that you bring that up, because that's something everyone always ponders, but is too scared to bring up because it's like a weird thing to bring up in a conversation. But it's so fascinating. And maybe because we all think about, why do people like us, and what inside of their minds. And
I think there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, I think it's because the reason why we think that people like us because we're eccentric is because we're scared that we're not eccentric, so we're basic. We're scared of that.
Yeah.
But we're also scared of the fact that we're not. There's nothing else worthwhile to love about us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe people like me because I'm actually nice to be around, but I'm scared of that. I'm scared that I'm. First off, I'm scared that I'm basic, but I'm also scared that I'm not nice, or that people don't like to be around me. So, anyways, that's an interesting thought. Anyways,
that is,
for more context, he basically he's and she tells him, tell me a story, and he goes like, okay, I mean, I get whatever. This sounds interesting. So he starts telling her a story about a comedian in the 1950s. I know it's a huge sip, but I've always wondered how you live with a comedian. You know what I mean? Because you never know if they're telling if they're being serious, they're being on. Like I've been fascinated with stand-up comedy. It's the whole thing about stand-up comedy is fascinating. There's no music. There's no. It's just a guy up there in their personality, or more accurately, their persona. They're standing up there. They're telling jokes, and people are just sitting there and listening to them and being entertained. It's just a fascinating thing to me. But anyways, he's basically a comedian, and his nickname is Windbag. In all the jazz clubs, his name is Windbag because Windbag is someone who talks a lot but says little value. So basically, Windbag is visited by an angel, and he's cursed with 100 words that he can speak until he can no longer speak ever again. So now his words have value. So if somebody shows him a painting and he says, that's beautiful, they know he meant it because he's using these precious words. So now his words have value.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a question of what are his last words? What's going to happen after he runs out of words? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So that's the context of this film. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone that's actually going to watch. I don't want to spoil the ending. Like, do the writer and the girl end up together? What happens to the comedian when he runs out of words? I'm not going to spoil any of that.
Yeah.
But anyways. So through this I learned a lot. I also view myself. I realized that I view myself. I think I'm very, very, very annoying to people.
Okay. This is interesting. I'm gonna let you finish in 2 seconds. But the way you're describing yourself is exactly the way that I describe myself. Right? I feel like people like me because I'm eccentric. And I feel like people that don't like me dislike me because I'm annoying. And there's a fear of not being special and not being interesting. There's a fear of the mundane, if you will. You don't want to be that guy that's just in the corner. You want to be the person that stands out from the crowd.
Yeah. And I think that we're scared. It's like, it's because I'm, annoying. And that might sound like a self-deprecating thing, but it's bad for 2 reasons. Number one, it's a cop-out. It's like, I'm annoying, so what can I do about it? And it's like, no, listen, if you're annoying, fix it. You know what I mean? Fix it.
Yeah.
But another realization is something maybe, I don't know, maybe we're scared to grapple with the fact that people suck. And, you know what I mean? Maybe it's not that I'm annoying, of course, but some people don't like me just because they're terrible people. And it's hard to wrap our minds around them. Around that fact. And so, so those are just some of the things I learned about myself through this film. and I'm excited
Yeah.
to see what people interpret it. His film is very
Yeah.
much about it has a cool plot, but it's more about making people feel and more about making people think, which is scary because people
Yeah.
like good plot, people like this, and I am learning
Yeah.
to let go. There's a lot of things I'm like, oh, I wish I
Yeah.
could change that. I wish I could change that, whatever. And I just want to see. And it's interesting. We did
Yeah.
interviews of people after the film was done, and everyone had their own interpretation of what it meant to them. Some people said it's about the value of words. Other people said it's
Yeah.
about learning to let go of things. Uh,
Yeah.
it's all kinds of things. So it's going to be interesting to see that. But yeah, I did learn a lot about myself, and that's so.
So that's very interesting. So I wonder about the interpretive process. I wonder how much of an interpretation is discovery of what the artist wanted to put into the screenplay or whatever it may be. And I wonder how much interpretation is simply maybe poking in the dark, maybe looking for things that you find significant to you. And I wonder, like, as the creator, like, how much of the stuff you put on the paper is consciously put on the paper, and how much of it is subconsciously put on the paper. You know?
That's a crazy
That's a
question.
huge.
That's a crazy question. Something
Yeah.
interesting that one of my favorite interviews ever is somebody Christopher Nolan was reading
Yep.
comments, and someone said, "My life is like a Christopher Nolan movie. I don't know what's going on." You know what I mean? And Christopher Nolan
Oh,
says, "You don't need to know what's going on. Just feel it." You know what I mean? Just feel it. Just
yeah.
experience it.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the things is,
Okay.
fine, let people interpret it, let, people get it, people don't get it, but don't be lazy. Put some work into your
Yeah.
story, put some work into your angles and your color grade and your music, put some work into it. Try, make it
Yeah.
beautiful. There
Yeah.
are some standards for beauty and what looks good. So put some effort to
Okay.
study that and stuff like that. But as far as interpretation, I think that for other people, I think that I think when you're writing a story, there needs to be an overarching theme. So I think for Windbag, it's how are you stewarding what you have now? Okay, fine. You're going through writer's block. How are you reacting with this writer's block right now? You were dealt
Yeah.
a bad, or like the girl that he's interested in, Alice. Um, I made the reason why I called her Alice. And this is just for my own sake, was because Alice in Wonderland. She's a very lost person, so it's like Alice in Wonderland,
Okay.
lost in Wonderland. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's the reason
I
why I
like it.
called her Alice.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a stupid thing. But anyways, she's somebody
No, it's not. It's
that's
cool.
had a hard life, and so she has been dealt a bad deck of life. You know what I mean? She's been dealt a bad card, hand. So
Yeah.
how is she gonna deal with this? How is Caleb, the writer, how is he going to deal with this writer's block he has? So that's the overarching theme: is how are you stewarding this? Are you able to find the beauty in that? Um, are the
Yeah.
value of word, like how are you valuing your words and how are you valuing your relationships? What are you doing with what you have right now? Um, but
Yeah.
with I think that you should have an overarching theme. So when I'm writing, I'm like, okay, this is my overarching theme, and under that themes, there's a lot of other stuff. There's the questions
Yeah.
of, you know, the question of, what what we were talking about. Do I need to be a great writer in order to be a writer? Should I still be a writer if I'm not Dostoevsky?
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of
Yeah.
like a lot of other themes. It's like how to deal
Hmm.
with Alice, how to deal with pain, and trauma, and with the comedian
Yeah.
Charlie, how to restore relationships, how to, and I think there's an overarching theme of selfishness and all these things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what is romance? Like romantic love? Is it something that's substantial or is it not? Um,
Yeah.
because he falls for her. He falls for her really quickly. You think he falls in love with her right
Yeah.
away. They spend one night talking,
Hmm.
and he's like
Yeah.
in love with her. It's a classic writer artist thing. So yeah,
Oh my god.
to answer your
Yeah.
question is, I think that as I'm writing, there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, I don't know exactly what this means, but I think it fits the story. When you're getting to know a character, you write them and you want to get to know this character, and then you let the character do what they're supposed to do, and you're
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I don't this isn't what I like, but this is the character I've written, and this is who they are. This is what they would do in this situation, and I can't do something contrary
Oh,
because the audience is gonna feel that if you do something that like the character's been acting like this, and all of a sudden you better
yeah.
explain. I mean, don't do that, or explain why the character did that.
Yeah. It kind of brings up a question. How often do you revise your characters? Because like at least when I come up with stories, I'm always revising them because I
Yeah.
have new ideas or I want to contrive this thing, but I have to make it non-contrived. So you know,
Yeah, that's a good question. I revise. I mean, depends. Every project is different. Some projects, the character's so locked in, and it's so important for them to be this way, is that I will change the plot around them
yeah,
more than I'll change their personality or the way they look or whatever. But sometimes I'll
yeah.
change the way they look. Sometimes I'll change. This.
That's
It just
interesting.
depends. It depends on the story.
That's interesting. I do the exact opposite. So then again, you do way more story stuff than I ever have done. But I notice myself, I will change characters around plots, right? So I think it's interesting. I might be more of like a if we were to I don't know what so I would be like Chris Nolan 'cause I feel like he's less character driven and more plot driven, more ideas driven. But there's other films that are definitely character pieces. Like Joker would be one of them. Like you would be Todd
Yeah.
Phillips, and I would be Chris. Not that I would ever be like Chris Nolan. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
that's definitely it. Yeah, I think I'm very much more. I think that um, characters drive the plot more than the plot drives the characters, I guess. I don't know if that's right.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think that like I have a character and I'm like, okay, this character's faced with this situation. How will they react? You know
yeah,
what I mean? And you see Caleb go through this. It's like, the film opens with him getting an interview. So it's more of a professional setting. So I know that Caleb doesn't value other people's opinions very much. So he
yeah,
has a very disdainful attitude towards, you know what I mean, towards the interviewer.
yeah,
But then Caleb meets this girl, and Caleb's someone that's really attracted to beauty, to art. So he has a new way of responding to that. Uh, so yeah,
yeah.
I write the character. Have you seen The Man Who Invented Christmas?
No, it's
It's a
not.
film about Charles Dickens writing the Christmas Carol, and it was really cool.
Oh,
Like, there's this
okay.
one scene where
Yeah,
he's like trying to come up with like the character of Scrooge, and apparently, I don't know if this is accurate, but in the film, the way Dickens comes up with a character is by getting the name first. So he's going around. He has this
yeah,
kind of a concept of a character, and he's going like scrungy, and he finally gets the word
yeah,
Scrooge out, and the
yeah.
character like magically appears in front of him, and he's like, boom.
Uh-huh.
And then he like starts walking around
Yeah,
the character, and he starts talking to him. He's like, "So, Scrooge,
yeah,
tell me, what about you?
yeah.
What motivates you in life? Blah blah blah."
Hmm.
Anyways,
No, so that's interesting. I mean, I was just now thinking about this. I think you're more interested in people specifically and the nuances of
yeah,
people. Maybe I think if I were to write a story, it would be about ideas that are essential to all people. You would definitely touch on that too.
yeah,
But I was thinking because like I've like tried to develop this story idea. I got really inspired. I saw Dune too, and it got me really like excited about like just the whole Messiah thing. And anyway, but it got me on a whole like story thinking process. And I was thinking about like a multiverse idea, and I may not be able to recall it now. It's kind of on the spot. It's been a little bit, but the idea is something like if are you there?
yeah. I'm here.
You kind of you're totally good. Yeah. So the idea is if someone lives a life they really regret, they have a chance at the end of their life to actually go into a different universe and replace their previous self and live a new life. There's a lot more details in here because it actually gets a little bit political and stuff. The general point is like there's this idea of regret and is it really a good idea to be able to relive your life? Should you? I don't know. Anyway, those are just kind of questions I was exploring the thing that I was doing. But yeah, I think I was going to say something more with that, but that's
I
just
think
my.
that the way you would approach a story like that is you have this idea and you're trying to write characters that fit that idea.
Yes,
That's what you would
absolutely,
probably do. You'd be like, well,
absolutely.
if I'm you're like, okay, I want to tell this story about this concept. So what am I gonna do? Well,
Yeah,
I probably need a scientist to create this. You know what I mean? So then all of a sudden
yeah,
you have a
hmm
scientist who, and then all
yeah,
of a sudden you have this plot
yes,
born.
yeah,
So I think that's how
hmm
you'd be. Whereas for me, I'd be like, okay, I have a scientist who maybe you and I. This is how you and I would achieve this same thing. Is I'd be like,
okay,
oh, I have a scientist who has this idea, who has a lot of regrets, and this is who he is. So
yeah,
what does the scientist do? And that's
yeah.
how I would
That's
probably approach.
no, yeah, because like mine would have nothing to do with the origin of the multiverse or anything. So that's very interesting.
Yeah,
I wish I could see my notes because I had a lot of cool ideas. Maybe I can share it
that'd be
with you
awesome.
later. Yeah. Well, okay. So I suppose maybe as a final thing we could think about because you wanted to bring this up earlier, and I suppose we can ask each other about this. You want to know why I don't think I'm creative, but I also want to know why do you think you're creative? You know?
If viewers watch this video back, you'll notice I never really completely agreed with the fact that you're creative, that I'm creative.
Yeah. Okay.
I kind of,
What
kind of,
are you? What would you define yourself?
um, me?
Yeah.
Ah, man, I'm somebody that's very captivated by art, and I want to be art
Yeah.
creating something. I want to make, like, I want to be useful to something. I want to be creative. I want to have a purpose, and I
Yeah.
find myself that person. And maybe if that's creativity. Um, I don't know. I don't know if I'd say I'm creative because I haven't seen. I mean, a lot of people tell me that I am,
Yeah.
but I've heard this a lot. It's like when you're starting out, there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna be like, "Ooh, that's cool. Oh, you're working on your little film. Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool." And then when you're
Yeah.
successful, they're like, they just try to tear you down. You know, and they
Yeah.
try to,
Yeah.
end you. So I don't know. I guess time will tell if I'm truly creative and if I'm truly.
So are people trying to end you, or are people excited of
I'm
what you're
not.
doing, or both?
I haven't gotten the opportunity to get big yet. I purposefully put my
Yeah.
business on hold for a little bit to go to college to study. Um, but
Yeah.
after this film comes out, and then I have another film that I'm shooting hopefully next summer, and that one's gonna be bigger. And so as things get bigger and develop, we'll see. We'll see. There are some people.
Yeah.
There are some people who do say that to me. Yeah, there have been a couple of situations where someone's like, you're actually not you're not that good. You're just, you know what I mean. There's been a couple places,
Mhm.
and that's
Yeah.
been interesting. Um,
Yeah.
but um, I think that my art has impacted people, but I don't know if that makes me
Yeah.
creative. I don't know. I don't know.
No, yeah, I mean, like, I really think that maybe we should get like you, Steven, a bunch of people on one podcast and just answer the question: what does it mean to be
Yeah,
creative? Because that is so
I'd
difficult.
have to. I'd have to think. Yeah, we should do that. Let's do that. Let's do that.
That would be so
Let
fun. That
me
would be so fun.
do
Like,
some like thought thinking. Let me write some stuff down, and then I'll come back to be able to answer that question.
you know, it'd be so fun. Like me, you, Ben, and Steven, because the three of you have had conversations with me about value and beauty and
Yeah.
stuff. Having all of us on at
Yeah.
once to discuss one question
Yeah.
would be incredible. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, yes.
Let's do it. I'm down.
Yeah.
So why do you think you're not creative?
Well, so it really all hinges on what the word creative means. Like,
That's
you
what I
know,
was. Yeah.
I just, so the thing is, though, like, I really just feel like there's a difference between composing and learning music from the past, right? So my friend Ben's a composer, and I feel like, as you said, and you're absolutely correct, no ideas are new. We're just stealing stuff from people, and we're pretending like it's our own. We're kind of a collection of all of our experiences and everything. That's fine, but there's still a sense, and I'll talk to you about this on the phone. There's a sense in which the the specific collection of experiences you have no one else has. That's what makes it unique, right? Even if none of your ideas are your own, the collection of ideas you've developed is your own.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that might be what individualizes people. But the thing is with music, I mean, there's some individuality. Maybe I'm already defining creativity in terms of individuality, so maybe we've already made some progress. But I mean, in terms of individuality, like maybe there's a different way that I would phrase things. There's some interpretive things that are going to sound really nice, but at the end of the day, they feel like icing on the cake. Everyone's baking the same cake in this degree, right? All the collab pianists and the regular pianist, we're all just learning music, and we, even if someone rejects that there's an objective way to learn a piece, they're still going to learn it within the socially constructed standards that there are here. So that's not going to be useful when they're actually learning a piece. So we're all doing the same thing. We're all baking the same cake. It's just the icing we put on is different.
Hmm.
Whereas when it's you making a film or Ben Bean creating a piano piece, it's kind of like taking pieces of a bunch of different cakes and putting them into one big cake that is beautiful. So yeah, there's more individuality in what you're doing. That might be a necessary condition of creativity, individuality, and I just have less of that in my field.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I need to think
Yeah.
about that one. I have some thoughts.
So
I have some thoughts on that
Yeah.
now, but I need to think about that. I need to literally probably the first thing I'm going to do is Google the definition of creative and look at this.
Yeah.
Like I'm probably going to start there.
The etymology stuff,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that part of creativity is being able to paint outside the lines while still being inside the lines. It's kind of weird to make sense because the thing is,
Yeah.
you're inside the lines in the sense of like, okay, this is the notes that you're playing. This is the the measure. What do you call the beat? The 4/4. What do you call that? The 4/4.
The meter.
Yeah. So the meter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have the meter. So there's the lines there, and then when you add a little flair here and there, and even the way your body's moving, that's your own way of doing it.
Yeah.
Now, technically, a little kid who's never played the piano, they come over and they go like, technically, they're painting outside the lines. They're painting everything. And are they being creative?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, but not within this, like, maybe they are creative somehow, but not within the lines of music or Beethoven. You know what I mean? So within the context of Beethoven, somebody who just sits down and plays it without trying to without their own flair, I guess. But yeah, you're right. I think that there is, to an extent, it's a little harder to be creative in your field. But I guess the same thing could be said about plumbing. It's like, you know what I mean? You gotta connect, the toilet to the outside. It's pretty simple. You gotta connect it to the.
Yeah.
But it's like, we all have our own way of doing it. But I guess it's like, the creativity comes in like how you handle problems. Like, let's say there's a problem and you face a problem that you weren't expecting. Creativity comes in the ability to figure out a way to get around it. So like maybe creativity can come in the way you learn a piece. I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder if there's two definitions of creative here. Right? I think that definition of creative seems more like ingenuity. Is that the right word? Is that a word?
Yeah. No,
it's one of. I'm having those moments where like I'm saying a word, but it doesn't feel familiar to me, and so I'm like, wait. So I wonder if that's different than this kind of artistic creativity. I was wondering about something else too, because I think another necessary condition of creativity might be some amount of intentionality / order or something. Because when the kid goes and plunks the piano, right, and colors outside the lines, it's purely accidental. This is random. But if you took a coloring book and purposefully colored outside the lines, all of a sudden we're verging on some kind of artistry here. Even if it's to make a joke, right? You're making a point. So maybe there's something there.
I guess so is the kid then. You know what I mean?
Well, so I suppose like if the kid would just found a random piece of paper with like a picture and was just like doing whatever.
Think about
like
this. Let's say one kid comes over and goes bam bam bam, and then another kid comes over bam bam bam. That first kid's not creative because he just copied the other guy and he did the exact same thing that he did. Now if another kid came, one kid went bam 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 bam, And then another kid came over and went like, bam, 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 close the thing, open the thing, bam, 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 stood up on the thing. That's his own creative flourish.
That's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Mhm.
We got to work on our definition. I think that maybe we should.
That's so.
When we do the podcast, hopefully when we do the podcast with everyone else, I think maybe we should open by saying, "All right, everybody, give us like one sentence or whatever definition of creative."
See, here's the thing. That could literally be a part 2 to each one of these podcasts.
Yeah.
So like, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, we're getting pretty long on time. Like, so you have any closing remarks for the audience?
No, I think that whether or not you think you're a creative person, I think that you're a very eccentric person, and I think that's in a good way.
Okay.
Again, I remember seeing you playing at a recital, and the way you were absolutely engrossed with music, and the conversations you and I have had. And I think that overall, I think I appreciate you, and I think I appreciate what you're trying to do. I think you're very unapologetic in a lot of things, and I think we need a little bit more of that. And I think there's a utilitarian value to that.
Yeah.
Because I think that too many of us are trying to conform to something that's not us, and we're trying to live a lie. And whether or not we agree on everything, you and I, at least you're trying not to lie. And I think that one of the key things to art is stop trying to lie. You know what I mean?
So that's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I also definitely admire that in you. Like, there's been various instances in this podcast where you've been dead honest in interesting, creative ways, and I like that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think the more self-aware someone is, there's a virtue in that. There's definitely a big virtue in self-awareness and being okay with the self-awareness. That could be a whole other episode.
Yeah, self-awareness is self-awareness is something that when you do art, it reveals about you. But in order to do art better, you need to learn to be self-aware and critical of you know what I mean. Be aware of yourself and your shortcomings.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, Ivan, it's been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, dude.
Thank you for today. Yeah. So have a wonderful day, Ivan.
You too, man.